Captain Caleb Thornton muttered a curse under his breath as the control panel of the stellar Voyager flashed a series of red warning lights. The ship's systems were failing one after another. What was supposed to be a standard cargo haul from the outer settlements had rapidly morphed into a disaster. Just minutes ago, he had been leisurely cruising through the Andromeda margin, a region of space notorious for its volatile magnetic storms. Suddenly, his ship had been caught in a powerful surge of energy that sent the Voyager wildly off course. Come on, he grumbled, frantically manipulating the controls. The ship's sensors were rendered useless, scrambled by the force of the storm. He reached for the communication systems, desperate to send out a distress signal before the Voyager descended into the atmosphere of the unknown planet below. But no matter what he tried, the ship refused to respond. The atmospheric drag pulled him downward, the whole vessel groaning in protest as the planet's gravitational pull intensified. Caleb's heart raced. The viewport offered glimpses of a verdant world, vast forests, and sprawling mountains blanketed the surface, all illuminated by twin suns hanging low in the sky. It was undeniably beautiful. However, it also meant that his chances of survival were slim. A jungle planet like this was infamous for its uncharted perils. The ship's alarm blared louder, and before Caleb could brace himself, the Voyager slammed into the planet's upper atmosphere. The impact rocked the vessel, throwing him violently against his harness. He lost consciousness as the ship plummeted through the sky. Caleb's senses slowly returned. He blinked against a haze as he lay sprawled on soft ground, the pungent smell of damp earth and lush greenery filling his nostrils. Groaning, he sat up, wincing at the sharp pain that radiated through his ribs. His crash harness had saved his life, but his body was bruised and battered from the rough landing. His ship, the stellar Voyager, was a mangled wreck not far from where he sat today. Smoke rose from its damaged hull, but by some miracle, it hadn't exploded on impact. He had survived, but he knew his chances of repairing the ship and getting off the planet were practically non-existent. Caleb checked the emergency beacon strapped to his wrist. The display flickered with static, no signal. Whatever storm had knocked his ship out of the sky was still interfering with communications. He was stranded. He pulled himself to his feet, taking in the alien landscape around him. Towering trees stretched hundreds of feet into the sky, their thick trunks wrapped in vines and bioluminescent flowers. Strange bird-like creatures flitted among the branches, and in the distance, a waterfall cascaded down a cliff, its roar muffled by the dense foliage. Okay, Caleb muttered to himself, trying to shake off the disorientation. Find shelter, get supplies. As he began to move toward the wreckage of his ship to salvage what he could, the ground trembled beneath his feet. It was subtle at first, but the tremors grew stronger with each passing second. He froze, scanning the horizon. The trees in the distance swayed, their enormous branches creaking under the force of something moving, something big. The rumbling intensified, and Caleb's heart pounded in his chest. He quickly ducked behind a fallen tree trunk, peering through the gaps in the branches. What he saw next defied belief. 3 women emerged from the thick jungle, each of them towering at least 20 feet tall. Their footsteps made the ground quake beneath them as they moved with a strange grace for beings of their size. They were strikingly beautiful, their features captivating and otherworldly. Their skin had a faint shimmer, almost as though it absorbed the sunlight filtering through the trees. They wore clothing fashioned from the hides of strange beasts, intricately woven with what appeared to be threads of gold and silver. Their hair, long and flowing, shimmered like liquid metal in hues of gold, silver, and copper. Their eyes were large and bright, filled with curiosity and intelligence. Despite their immense size, there was nothing brutish about them. They moved with the elegance of dancers, their bodies strong and muscular yet undeniably feminine. Caleb's breath hitched in his throat. He had heard tales about massive humanoid species in the outer reaches of the galaxy, but they were thought to be myths lost to time. Yet here they were, right in front of him, giants. The lead woman, slightly taller than the others, knelt down, her massive hands reaching toward the wreckage of the ship. Caleb watched as her enormous fingers delicately inspected the mangled hull. Her face softened with something akin to recognition as she examined the markings on the ship, then turned her attention to the ground near where he had crash-landed. I sense him, she said, her voice deep and resonant, vibrating through the air like distant thunder. He's close. Caleb's blood ran cold. He hadn't expected them to speak, let alone in a language he understood. Before he could react, the giantess turned her head, her glowing blue eyes locking onto the very tree he was hiding behind. With a swift movement, she rose to her full height and took a single step toward him. The earth quaked. "Come out, human," she called, her voice firm yet gentle. "We mean you no harm." Caleb swallowed hard, knowing he had no chance of outrunning them. His mind raced, weighing his options. He could stay hidden and hope they moved on, or he could face them and hope they really weren't hostile. Deciding he had no choice, Caleb slowly stood and stepped out from behind the tree. The three giant women watched him intently, their eyes widening in what looked like surprise and relief. "It's true," the lead woman whispered, a note of awe in her voice. "Another one has come." The giantess knelt again, this time lowering herself to Caleb's level. Her gaze was soft, filled with something he hadn't expected, hope. The other two women remained standing, their eyes trained on him with a similar mix of curiosity and anticipation. "You are human," she said, her voice carrying a strange, reverent tone. "You must come with us." "Come with you?" Caleb stammered, his voice barely steady. "Why? Who are you?" The woman extended her hand, palm up, an invitation rather than a command. Her hand alone was large enough for him to stand in. "We are the daughters of Viridia, the last of our kind, and you, human, may be our salvation." Before Caleb could protest, the giantess scooped him up with surprising gentleness. He found himself cradled in her hand as she rose to her full height once more. The view from her vantage point was staggering. He could see miles of the jungle stretching out in every direction, but his mind was spinning with the enormity of what had just happened. They were taking him somewhere, and he had no idea what awaited him. As they walked deeper into the forest, Caleb tried to ask questions, but the giantesses remained silent, their faces set in quiet determination. Soon, they reached the edge of a massive clearing, and what lay beyond took his breath away. A village nestled among the towering trees came into view. But this was no ordinary village. The structures were enormous, built into the trunks and branches of the colossal trees. Walkways and bridges connected the dwellings, all crafted from living wood and vines. It was an architectural marvel, blending seamlessly with nature, as if the forest itself had grown the buildings. In the center of the village, surrounded by dozens of giant women, sat an even larger figure, a woman of regal bearing, taller and more majestic than the rest. Her eyes were sharp, filled with the wisdom of centuries, and she wore a crown of woven gold and silver branches. She was the leader of the tribe, and as Caleb was brought before her, she gazed down at him with a mixture of sorrow and hope. "You have come at last, human," she said in a voice that rumbled through the clearing like a mountain shifting. "You are the one we have waited for. Our tribe is dying, and we have no more men. You must father our children." Caleb sat in stunned silence, his heart pounding. He had crash-landed on a world inhabited by beautiful giant women, and now they were asking him to save their species. Caleb Thornton remained in stunned silence, staring up at the enormous woman before him. Her words echoed in his mind, "You must father our children." It was an impossible demand, something out of a wild dream or a nightmare. Yet, the solemn expressions on the faces of the giant women surrounding him told him this was no joke. The weight of their desperation hung in the air like a dense fog. The leader of the tribe, the tallest and most regal of them all, sat on her throne of living wood, her golden crown gleaming in the soft sunlight that filtered through the massive trees above her. Her eyes, deep, piercing, and wise, were fixed on him. She was a woman of immense power and grace, but her gaze was softened by a sadness that seemed to run deep. "I know this is overwhelming," she said, her voice steady but filled with ancient sorrow. "But we have waited for so long. You are the first human to set foot on this planet in many generations. Our legends told of a kind man who could save us from extinction." Caleb struggled to find his voice. "Save you? How?" "I don't understand what you're asking of me." The giantess, rising from her throne with a grace that belied her immense size, motioned for Caleb to follow her. Despite his hesitation, he walked alongside her as she led him out of the central clearing and deeper into the village. As they moved through the settlement, he noticed more and more of the giant women watching him with a mixture of curiosity and hope. Some even whispered to one another as they saw him. The buildings, nestled in the trees and carved from their living trunks, were like nothing Caleb had ever seen. They were elegant yet primal, as if nature itself had shaped them for the women. It was clear that these giants lived in harmony with their surroundings, using the forest's resources without damaging it. Birds and strange alien creatures flitted through the branches, completely unafraid of the enormous beings below. The leader spoke as they walked, her deep voice resonating through the air. Our people, the daughters of Viridia, were once a thriving civilization. We were scholars, artists, warriors, and leaders. We lived for centuries in balance with our world, the planet we call Illyria, named after our first queen. They came to a large open space in the forest where towering stone statues stood in a circle. The figures were carved from black and white stone, worn by time but still majestic. They depicted men, giant men, as tall as the women who now ruled the land. Each statue was intricately detailed, with powerful, noble features and regal clothing. Caleb felt a chill run down his spine as he realized these were not just works of art, but monuments to a lost people. The giantess stopped before one of the statues, a towering figure with eyes that seemed to gaze into eternity. "These were our fathers, our brothers, our sons," she said, her voice tinged with sadness, "but they are gone, all of them." "What happened to them?" Caleb asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She turned to face him, her eyes filled with centuries of grief. "Long ago, our world was at peace, but we were not alone in this part of the galaxy. Another race, vicious, cruel beings from the distant stars, invaded Illyria. They sought to claim our resources, and they brought war to our land. Our men fought bravely to defend us. They wielded weapons of great power, using technology and strength beyond anything your human race can imagine." Her hand traced the stone surface of the statue, as if she could still feel the presence of the man it represented. But it was not enough. The invaders unleashed a weapon, one that specifically targeted our male population. The men fell one by one. It was a plague, a sickness that wiped them from existence, while we, the women, were left untouched. Caleb's mind reeled at the enormity of what she was telling him. An entire civilization's male population wiped out by an alien plague, leaving only the women behind. He couldn't even begin to fathom the scale of such a loss. "How did you survive?" he asked, his voice filled with awe and horror. "We adapted," she said softly. "We became warriors, leaders, and protectors of our world. We drove the invaders from our lands, but the damage had already been done. Without our men, our population dwindled. For generations, we sought a way to continue. We tried to reproduce through our own means, through ancient technologies and rituals, but nothing worked. The curse of infertility has plagued us for centuries." Caleb felt the weight of her words settle over him. He glanced up at the towering statue, its cold stone face staring down at him. It was clear now that these women were not asking him for something trivial. They were asking him to help save an entire species from extinction. "But why me?" he asked, feeling a surge of anxiety. "I'm just a pilot. I'm not special. What makes you think I can help?" The giantess turned to him, her eyes filled with a strange mixture of hope and certainty. "Our ancestors foretold that one day, a man from the stars would come, a man not of our blood but of another world. Your kind, the humans, holds enough of our essence to spark life in our people once more. We believe that your genetic code, your vitality, can restore what we have lost." Caleb blinked, stunned. You think my DNA can somehow fix this?" "Yes," she replied, her gaze unwavering. "It is the only hope we have left." She led him further into the forest, past the statues of their fallen men, to a great temple nestled within the heart of a towering mountain. The structure was carved directly into the rock, its entrance framed by ancient symbols and runes that glowed faintly in the twilight. Inside, a vast chamber awaited, its walls lined with murals depicting the history of their people, glorious, tragic, and eternal. At the center of the chamber was a massive stone basin filled with a glowing liquid that pulsed with life. The liquid cast an eerie light across the room, illuminating the faces of the ancient giants carved into the walls. "This is the heart of our people," the giantess said as they approached the basin. "This is where the bond will be made. Our scholars believe that your blood, combined with the essence of this sacred pool, can awaken the fertility we have lost. It will restore life to our wounds." Caleb stared at the glowing pool, feeling a mixture of awe and fear. You want me to father children with your people?" She nodded, her expression solemn. "Yes. Not just children, but a new generation of our race. Without you, we will die. Our line will end. But with you, we can live again." Caleb stepped back, his heart racing. The enormity of the task they were asking of him hit him like a tidal wave. Could he really do this? Could he be the father to an entire race? The pressure was overwhelming. This wasn't just about him anymore, it was about the future of an entire species. I don't know if I can do this," he admitted, his voice cracking. The giantess knelt before him, her immense size dwarfing him, but her tone was gentle and pleading. "You are our last hope, human. I know this is not the life you expected, but we have no one else. If you refuse, our people will vanish into history, like the wind in the trees. I beg you, please." For the first time since his crash, Caleb saw the full scope of the tragedy that had befallen these women. They weren't asking for a favor, they were asking for survival, and he was the only one who could give it to them. As he stared into the glowing pool, the murals on the walls, and the faces of the women who had greeted him with hope and reverence, something inside him shifted. He hadn't chosen this path, but maybe, just maybe, it had chosen him. I need time," Caleb said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need to think." The giantess nodded, rising to her full height. "We understand. You will have time to make your choice, but know that time is not on our side." With that, she led him back to the village, where he was given a place to rest high in the trees, surrounded by the peaceful sounds of the forest. As he lay there, staring up at the stars, Caleb knew that his decision would determine the fate of an entire civilization, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for the responsibility. Caleb spent the night in the village, trying to rest beneath the canopy of the towering trees. Despite the peaceful surroundings, sleep eluded him. His mind churned with thoughts of what the giantess, Illyria, had told him. The weight of their request, no, their plea, pressed down on him like an unbearable burden. Outside, the village was quiet, with the soft calls of nocturnal creatures filling the air. Strange bioluminescent plants lit up the pathways, casting a soft, ethereal glow over the landscape. Despite the beauty of the world around him, Caleb's mind was consumed by the enormity of the decision he had to make. He had never wanted this. He was a simple pilot, a man who had taken to the stars to escape the constraints of life on Earth. All he wanted was the freedom of space, the isolation, and the thrill of exploration. He hadn't signed up to save an entire civilization, yet here he was, the fate of the giant women resting squarely on his shoulders. Unable to rest, Caleb got up from the makeshift bed the giants had crafted for him, an enormous hammock made of thick vines and soft furs. He stepped out into the open air, drawn to the cool breeze that rustled the trees. The village was illuminated by the twin moons that hung low in the sky, casting everything in a pale silver light. He wandered the village's elevated pathways, high among the treetops, his thoughts heavy. The giant women moved silently below, their glowing eyes watching him, but no one approached. They gave him space, understanding the magnitude of what they had asked. Yet every glance from them, filled with hope and silent expectation, weighed on him. They were all waiting for his answer. Caleb reached a small clearing where a waterfall cascaded down into a pool far below. He sat on a ledge, staring out at the alien landscape. His thoughts drifted to the statues he had seen earlier, the massive stone men who had once walked this world. Now, they were gone, reduced to memories and carvings. Would the same fate befall the women if he refused? Before he could lose himself further in his thoughts, he heard a familiar soft voice behind him. "You can't sleep either?" Caleb turned to see Illyria approaching, her towering form moving with grace despite her size. She wore a long, flowing robe of woven silver and gold fibers, the shimmering material reflecting the moonlight. Her face, though regal, held a deep sadness that resonated with him. "I didn't mean to disturb you," she said, kneeling beside him. Even in a kneeling position, she still towered over him, but there was a gentleness to her presence, a softness that contrasted with her powerful stature. "You didn't," Caleb replied, his voice low. He shifted awkwardly, unsure how to speak to someone who had laid the survival of an entire species at his feet. I can't stop thinking about everything." Illyria gazed out at the waterfall, her expression contemplative. "It is not a small thing we've asked of you, Caleb. I know this. You are far from home, in a place that must seem strange and overwhelming, and yet, we have placed our hopes on you. I don't want you to feel forced, but our situation is dire." Caleb ran a hand through his hair, still trying to grasp the gravity of it all. "But why me? Why now? There are billions of people in the galaxy. Why was I the one who landed here? I don't even know if I can do what you're asking. I'm not some hero or savior." Illyria sighed softly, her gaze fixed on the shimmering pool below. "I understand how you feel, but there are forces at work in this universe that are beyond any of us. Perhaps you were always meant to come here. Perhaps it is destiny. But I do not ask you to be a hero, Caleb. I ask only for your help, nothing more." She paused, her voice growing quieter, more vulnerable. "Our people have lived in isolation for so long. We have tried everything to survive, to find a way to bring life back to our tribe, but nothing has worked. We are dying, and soon there will be no one left to remember us. You are our last hope, and it is not just survival we seek, but the chance to live, to grow, to love again." Her words struck a chord deep within Caleb. He could hear the desperation in her voice, the centuries of loss and struggle. The burden she carried was immense, not just as a leader, but as a woman who had watched her people fade into extinction. It wasn't just about continuing a lineage, it was about restoring hope, about giving them a future worth living for. "I'm just one man," he whispered, shaking his head. "How can I make that kind of difference? I don't know if I'm strong enough for that." Illyria turned to him, her eyes soft but filled with determination. "Strength isn't about being without fear or doubt. It's about moving forward in spite of it. You have shown great strength already, surviving the crash and facing this impossible situation. That is why I believe you are the one we have waited for." She reached out, her enormous hand gently resting beside him on the ledge. "I know this is not an easy decision, but understand, Caleb, that you are not alone in this. We will honor you, support you, and cherish you for the gift you would give us. You would not just be the father of our children, you would be part of our tribe, part of our family." Caleb felt a lump rise in his throat. The sincerity in her words was undeniable. He could feel the weight of her people's history, their suffering, and their need for survival. Illyria was not begging him out of selfishness, but out of love for her people, for the chance to give them a future that had been stolen from them. "I don't know if I can ever go back," he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "If I agree, this is my life now, isn't it?" Illyria's expression softened, her eyes reflecting the twin moons above. "If you choose to stay, your life will change, yes, but it will be a life filled with purpose, with connection. You will be part of something far greater than any of us. You will be remembered for generations to come, not as an outsider, but as a man who saved an entire race from extinction." Caleb felt his chest tighten. He had always thought of himself as a drifter, someone who had no roots, no lasting purpose. He had escaped to the stars to avoid responsibility, to find freedom in the endless void. But now, standing on the edge of a decision that could shape the future of an entire species, he realized that freedom wasn't the absence of responsibility, it was the ability to choose what kind of impact you wanted to have on the world around you. He started, his voice faltering, "I'm scared." Illyria smiled gently, her massive form radiating warmth. I am too, she admitted, but sometimes, fear is what pushes us to be stronger, to do things we never thought we were capable of. You have that strength within you, Caleb, I can see it. They sat in silence for a moment, the sound of the waterfall filling the space between them. The night air was cool, and the moons reflected off the water like silver coins. Caleb felt a strange sense of calm wash over him, as if the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for his decision. After what felt like an eternity, Caleb exhaled slowly and looked up at Illyria. Her eyes were filled with hope, but also understanding. She wouldn't force him, the choice was his alone. I'll do it, he said quietly, the words tasting unfamiliar on his tongue. I'll help your people. Illyria's eyes brightened, a mix of relief and gratitude washing over her face. She didn't speak, but the look she gave him was enough, filled with more emotion than words could convey. Caleb wasn't sure if he was making the right decision, but for the first time in his life, he felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. He wasn't just a pilot anymore, drifting through the cosmos. He was about to become a savior, a father, a protector of an entire race. And despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, he realized that maybe this was the purpose he had been searching for all along. The next morning, the dawn broke over the forest, bathing the village in warm golden light. Caleb stood at the edge of the village, watching as the giant women gathered to greet the new day. The atmosphere had shifted, the air was filled with renewed energy, a sense of anticipation. Illyria stood beside him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. Thank you, Caleb, she said softly, for choosing us. Caleb nodded, still grappling with the reality of his decision. What happens now? Illyria smiled, a gentle yet powerful expression. Now, we begin the ceremonies, the first steps toward the renewal of our people. You are part of our tribe now, and we will guide you through every part of the journey. Caleb glanced at her, then at the other giant women moving through the village. He saw hope in their eyes, the spark of life that had been absent for so long. For the first time since his crash, he felt like he belonged. And as the sun rose higher into the sky, Caleb knew that his life would never be the same again. He wasn't just a lost pilot anymore, he was their future. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the treetop village. The air was thick with anticipation, the giant women moving with a quiet sense of purpose, their normally graceful motions even more deliberate. Caleb stood at the heart of it all, feeling a strange mixture of apprehension and resolution. Today marked the beginning of a journey he never could have imagined, a journey that would tie his fate to this tribe of beautiful giants. In the days since he had made his decision, the village had undergone a subtle but unmistakable transformation. The women, once solemn and burdened by their plight, now moved with a renewed energy, their eyes sparkled with hope, and soft conversations filled the air where silence had previously reigned. Caleb had become more than just a visitor, he had become the embodiment of their future, their chance for survival. But despite the gravity of what was about to happen, the women treated him with care and reverence, ensuring that he felt more like a partner than a pawn in their quest for survival. Illyria had been especially attentive, offering him comfort and guidance as they prepared for the sacred ceremony that would mark the beginning of the renewal of their people. It was dusk now, and the village had gathered at the temple carved into the mountain, where the glowing pool of life awaited. The massive stone basin, filled with the sacred liquid, pulsed with a faint, otherworldly light, casting a soft glow across the faces of the gathered giants. The murals on the walls, depicting the lost history of their people, seemed to shimmer in the twilight, as if the spirits of their ancestors were watching. Caleb stood by Illyria's side, feeling small but not insignificant in the presence of these towering women. He had chosen to be here, and now, as the ceremony was about to begin, he felt a sense of peace settle over him. His fear had not vanished, but it had transformed into something different than understanding of the immense responsibility that lay ahead. Illyria turned to him, her eyes warm but serious. "Are you ready, Caleb?" she asked, her voice gentle yet firm. He nodded, swallowing hard. "As ready as I'll ever be." She smiled, a small but reassuring gesture, and then turned to address the gathered women, her voice carried across the temple like the rolling of distant thunder, filled with both reverence and authority. "Sisters, we stand here today on the brink of a new beginning," Illyria said, her eyes sweeping across the crowd. For centuries, we have carried the weight of our extinction, the memory of our lost fathers, brothers, and sons. But today, we take the first steps toward a future we thought was lost. Our ancestors foretold that a man from the stars would come to save us, and now, he is here. Caleb Thornton, a human, has chosen to stand with us, to be part of our tribe, and to father the children who will carry on our legacy. The gathered women bowed their heads in reverence, their eyes glowing softly in the dim light. Caleb could feel their collective energy, their hope and anticipation, surrounding him like a living presence. It was overwhelming, but also deeply moving. They weren't just looking at him as a savior, they were looking at him as part of their future, a man who would become part of their history, their lives. Illyria stepped forward, motioning for Caleb to join her at the edge of the glowing pool. She knelt beside it, her immense frame lowering gracefully, and dipped her hands into the sacred liquid. As she did, the glow intensified, the pool pulsing with light that seemed to respond to her touch. This pool contains the essence of life, Illyria explained, her voice soft and reverent. It is the key to unlocking what has been lost in us. When we merge your essence with ours, through the ancient rites, we believe it will awaken the fertility that has long been dormant. Caleb knelt beside her, feeling the heat of the glowing pool radiating up from the surface. It wasn't just warm, it was alive, pulsing with an energy that seemed to resonate deep within him. He glanced up at Illyria, who offered him a reassuring nod. She was calm, confident, but there was a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes, as if she too was nervous about what would come next. This is a sacred ritual, she continued, it is not merely physical, it is a spiritual union, a bonding of our souls as well as our bodies. You will not just be a father to our children, Caleb, you will become part of our people, connected to us in ways that transcend time and space. Caleb felt a lump rise in his throat. The gravity of the moment was almost too much to bear, but there was no turning back. He had made his choice, and now he would see it through. Illyria reached out, taking his hand gently in hers, her enormous fingers warm and strong. Together, she whispered, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine, we will begin. The ceremony began with a low, melodic chant from the gathered women. Their voices rose and fell in perfect harmony, the sound reverberating through the temple like a living heartbeat. As the chant grew louder, Illyria led Caleb to the center of the chamber, where they stood before the glowing pool. She lifted a small ceremonial blade, carved from ancient stone, and made a shallow cut on her palm. Caleb followed suit, using a smaller blade crafted for his size. Their blood mingled as it dripped into the pool, and the liquid began to shimmer, swirling with vibrant colors, gold, blue, and silver. The energy in the room intensified, and Caleb felt a strange sensation wash over him, as if the pool was reaching out to him, connecting with something deep within his soul. Illyria stepped closer to him, her eyes glowing with the light of the pool, and placed her hand gently on his chest. You are one of us now, Caleb, she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of both ritual and affection. From this moment on, you are no longer an outsider, you are part of our family, part of our future. Caleb's heart raced, but he felt a strange calm settle over him. He had never imagined his life would take such a turn, but now, standing here with Illyria, surrounded by these giant women who had placed their faith in him, he realized that this was where he was meant to be. The chanting grew louder, the sound filling the temple, and Illyria leaned in closer, her face inches from his. Despite her immense size, her presence was gentle, her eyes filled with something he hadn't expected, gratitude, but also tenderness. She brushed her fingers lightly against his cheek, her touch surprisingly delicate. This is just the beginning, she whispered, her breath warm against his skin. Our people will live again. The months that followed the ceremony marked the start of a new chapter, not just for the tribe, but for Caleb as well. Over the following months, he became an integral part of the community, his role no longer that of an outsider, but of a father and partner to the tribe's women. The bonds he formed with them, especially Illyria, deepened, not just through the ceremonies, but through shared moments, laughter, and the simple joys of daily life. The first signs of success came quickly. Illyria, along with several other women, soon became pregnant, an event that sent waves of joy and celebration through the village. The impossible had happened, life had returned to the tribe. The curse of infertility had been broken, and the children they carried would be the first of a new generation. Caleb watched in awe as their bellies swelled, their faces glowing with the anticipation of motherhood. He had never considered himself a father, but now, as he walked among the towering women, he realized that he wasn't just a father to one or two children, he was the father of an entire future, the progenitor of a race that had been on the brink of extinction. Illyria often sat with him in the evenings, her hand resting protectively over her growing belly, the two of them sharing quiet moments of reflection and wonder. The bond between them had grown strong, built not just on duty, but on genuine affection. Caleb had come to care for her deeply, and she, in turn, had grown to trust and rely on him in ways she hadn't anticipated. "You've given us everything," Illyria said one night as they sat beneath the stars, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I can never thank you enough." Caleb smiled, reaching up to place his hand on hers. "You don't have to thank me," he replied. All of this, it's become my home." The day of the first birth was a day of both awe and celebration. The village gathered as Illyria gave birth to a daughter, an enormous, healthy child who bore the strength and beauty of her mother, but also a unique spark of humanity. The infant's cry echoed through the forest, a sound that brought tears to the eyes of every woman in the tribe. Caleb stood at Illyria's side, overwhelmed by the moment. He had never imagined he would be here, in this place, witnessing the birth of a new generation, but as he looked into the eyes of his newborn daughter, he knew that this was where he was meant to be. As the months passed, more children were born, each a living testament to the union between Caleb and the tribe of giants. The village was filled with the sounds of laughter and joy as the children grew strong and healthy, the hope of their people made flesh. Caleb's life had changed in ways he could never have foreseen, but as he stood among the women and children, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had given them a future, but in doing so, he had also found his own. He was no longer the lost pilot drifting through the stars, he was a father, a protector, and a part of something greater than himself. And as the tribe flourished, Caleb knew that their future was secure. The tribe of beautiful giant women would live on, and he would be remembered, not just as the man who fathered their children, but as the man who had given them hope. The first births were a watershed moment, transforming the village and cementing Caleb's place within it. He found himself learning the customs of the tribe, the intricacies of their language, and the rhythm of their lives. He participated in their hunts, their crafting, and their daily routines, gradually becoming more than just a provider, he became a part of their culture. He learned to navigate the forest with an ease that surprised even himself, his smaller frame a curious contrast to the towering figures he now called family. As the children grew, the village became a vibrant hub of activity. The young giants were curious and energetic, their laughter echoing through the trees, a testament to the hope that now permeated the air. Caleb spent hours teaching them about his own world, sharing stories of Earth, the stars, and the technology of his people, carefully avoiding the details of how his ship had crashed. He wanted them to see the vastness of the universe, to understand that their world was not alone, and to inspire in them a thirst for knowledge and adventure. The relationship between Caleb and Illyria continued to deepen, their bond a complex tapestry woven with respect, affection, and shared responsibility. They were partners in every sense of the word, not just in raising the children, but in leading the tribe and shaping its future. Illyria's strength and wisdom complemented Caleb's adaptability and perspective. She relied on him for his insights and his compassion, while he admired her resilience and unwavering devotion to her people. They often discussed the challenges they faced, planning strategies to protect the tribe, ensuring that their children would grow up in peace and harmony. They worked to uncover the secrets of the ancient technology left behind by the tribe's ancestors, hoping to harness its power for the betterment of their civilization. Their nights were spent under the stars, their conversations flowing seamlessly between the mundane and the profound, their connection a constant source of comfort and inspiration. As the children grew older, they developed into a new generation, possessing the unique blend of their mother's strength and the human adaptability they inherited from Caleb. They were tall and powerful, yet they possessed a curiosity and a resourcefulness that set them apart from their ancestors. One day, while exploring an ancient part of the forest with some of the older children, Caleb stumbled upon a hidden cave, its entrance obscured by thick vines. Inside, he found a series of murals, older than any he had seen before. These murals told a different story, a tale not of war and loss, but of a time when the tribe had been connected to the cosmos, when they had possessed the technology to travel among the stars. He saw depictions of starships, of advanced cities, and of a civilization that had once been masters of their own destiny. The discovery stirred something within him, a realization that there was more to their history than what had been passed down through the generations. He realized that the key to their future might lie in understanding their past, in rediscovering the knowledge that had been lost when their men had perished. He shared his findings with Illyria, and together they began to investigate further, delving deeper into the mysteries of their history. They gathered the tribe's scholars and historians, and together they began to translate the ancient texts, slowly piecing together the puzzle of their ancestors' lost technology. The task was daunting, but the hope of rediscovering their past drove them forward, each discovery bringing them closer to understanding their true potential. As the years went by, the village continued to flourish. The tribe had rebuilt itself, their population growing and their skills developing, fueled by the hope of a brighter future. Caleb, once a reluctant savior, had become a beloved leader, revered for his courage, his wisdom, and his unwavering devotion to his new family. He had learned to love this world and its people, and he had come to understand that his purpose was no longer to escape the constraints of life on earth, but to embrace the responsibilities that had been thrust upon him. He still felt the pull of the stars, the yearning for the freedom of space, but those desires were now tempered by the love he had for his children, his partner, and his adopted tribe. He had found a new freedom, a freedom rooted in connection and purpose, a freedom that was more profound and meaningful than anything he had ever known before. The children, now teenagers, were eager to learn, their minds full of questions about the universe and their place within it. They possessed a natural curiosity and a thirst for knowledge, qualities that Caleb nurtured and encouraged. He taught them about the stars, about mathematics, and about the importance of critical thinking. He wanted them to be more than just warriors and providers, he wanted them to be scholars, innovators, and leaders, capable of shaping their own destiny. One evening, as they sat around a crackling fire under the twin moons, one of the teenagers, a girl named Lyra, approached Caleb with a question that had been on her mind for some time. "Father," she said, her voice filled with earnest curiosity, "why did you come here? Why did you crash on our world?" Caleb's heart skipped a beat. It was a question he had been avoiding, a detail he had kept hidden for fear of the reaction it might provoke. He looked into the young woman's eyes, his face reflecting the warm glow of the fire. He knew that he couldn't keep the truth from them any longer, they deserved to know his story, and he owed it to them to be honest. He took a deep breath and began to tell them the story of his life before he had come to their world. He described Earth, the bustling cities, the advanced technology, and the reason why he had decided to leave, seeking out the freedom of the stars. He spoke of his ship, the stellar Voyager, and how it had been caught in a magnetic storm that had sent him crashing onto their planet. He also told them about his initial fear and uncertainty, and how he had been transformed by the love and acceptance he had found among them. The teenagers listened intently, their faces a mixture of awe and understanding. They had always known that their father was different, that he came from a world beyond their own, but hearing his story made them realize just how much he had sacrificed for them. They saw his humanity, his vulnerabilities, and the incredible courage he had shown by embracing a life that had never been his plan. When he finished speaking, there was a moment of silence, the only sound being the crackling fire. Then Lyra spoke again, her voice filled with admiration and love. "Father," she said, "you are not just a pilot, you are our savior. You came to our world when we were lost, and you have given us the chance to live again. We are forever in your debt." The other teenagers nodded in agreement, their eyes filled with a reverence that made Caleb's heart swell with emotion. He realized that his story, his past, had become part of their history, and it had only strengthened their bond and reaffirmed their connection. He wasn't just their father by genetics, but by choice, by love, and by the shared experience that had brought them all together. That night, Caleb knew that he had made the right decision. He had found a place where he belonged, a family who loved him, and a purpose that was greater than himself. He was not just a part of their story, he had become an integral part of their future, and that, he realized, was more than he could ever have asked for. He sat beside Illyria as the moon rose higher, his heart full of gratitude, and he knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, as a family, a tribe, and a civilization ready to take their place among the stars. The journey was far from over, but for now, he was content with his life and the profound impact he had had on this world and its beautiful, giant women. As the years continued to pass, Caleb and Illyria's efforts to unlock their people's past began to yield significant results. The ancient texts and murals, once indecipherable, were gradually revealing the secrets of their ancestors' technology. They discovered the schematics for advanced energy sources, the construction of starships, and the intricacies of interstellar communication. It became clear that the people of Illyria had not always been isolated on their planet. They had once been a spacefaring civilization, connected to a network of worlds and possessing the power to traverse the vastness of space. The revelation sparked a new dream among the tribe, to reclaim their place among the stars, to once again become a civilization that could explore the galaxy and connect with other worlds. They established a council of elders, led by Illyria and Caleb, to oversee the efforts of rebuilding their technology. Their workshops and laboratories, once filled with the simple tools of survival, were now brimming with cutting-edge machinery and scientific equipment, all crafted from resources found on their world. The children, now young adults, worked alongside their elders, learning the skills necessary to operate and maintain the complex technology. They were not just learning about their past, they were actively shaping their future, building a new foundation for their civilization. One of the most significant breakthroughs came when they discovered the plans for a powerful energy source that was both clean and sustainable, a technology that was far ahead of anything Caleb had ever seen on Earth. This discovery opened up new possibilities, allowing them to develop technologies that had seemed impossible just a few years before. They started constructing their own version of the starship designs they had found, adapting them to the resources available on their planet. The work was painstaking, requiring meticulous attention to detail, and it took years to complete the first vessel. But with each step forward, the tribe grew stronger, their confidence building with every success. Caleb found himself sharing his own knowledge of spaceship design and operation, working alongside the giant engineers, adapting the technology he knew to fit their unique circumstances. He became a bridge between the ancient past and the promising future, his human ingenuity complementing their advanced technology. He often thought back to the pilot he had once been, a man adrift in the vastness of space, and he marveled at how far he had come, how his life had taken an unexpected turn and led him to a purpose he never could have imagined. Finally, after years of hard work and dedication, the first starship was ready. It was a magnificent vessel, combining the ancient elegance of their ancestors' designs with the cutting-edge technology of their own ingenuity. The ship stood tall against the backdrop of the forest, a testament to their resilience and their unwavering determination. The entire tribe gathered to witness the launch, their faces a mixture of anticipation and awe. Illyria stood beside Caleb, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "We have come so far," she whispered, her voice filled with pride. "And you, my love, have made it all possible." Caleb smiled, his heart swelling with emotion. He looked out at the faces of the children, who were now young men and women, their eyes full of hope and excitement. He knew that this was not just the launch of a starship, it was the launch of a new era for their people. With a deep breath, Caleb and Illyria, along with a select crew of the tribe's most skilled pilots and engineers, boarded the ship. The launch was smooth and seamless, the vessel ascending into the atmosphere with a power and grace that belied its massive size. As they soared into the sky, they looked down upon their world, the forest and mountains receding below them. They had left their home, but they were carrying their future with them, a future that was now full of possibilities. Their journey to the stars had begun. For years, Caleb had yearned for the freedom of space, the thrill of exploration, but now, the desire was not just for himself, it was for his tribe, for his children, for the beautiful giant women who had given him a new life, a new home, and a new purpose. He knew that their journey would not be without its challenges, but he also knew that they were ready to face them, to navigate the vast unknown, together. The starship, christened the Viridian Hope, became a symbol of their resilience and their unwavering faith in their future. The voyage was long and challenging, taking them to distant stars and new worlds. They explored ancient ruins and encountered new civilizations, learning and growing with each experience. The tribe of giant women, once on the brink of extinction, had become a thriving civilization once again, not just survivors, but explorers, scientists, and ambassadors to the cosmos. Caleb, once a lost pilot, had become a legend, a man who had not only saved a species from oblivion but had also helped them reclaim their place among the stars. He was no longer simply a father, he was a patriarch, a leader, and an inspiration to generations to come. He would be remembered not just for the children he had fathered, but for the hope and the courage he had given to an entire civilization. Many years later, Caleb sat with Illyria on the bridge of the Viridian Hope, looking out at the vast expanse of the galaxy. Their children and grandchildren were now spread across the ship and the worlds they had begun to colonize, each of them contributing to the growing civilization. Illyria's hand rested in Caleb's, her eyes filled with love and gratitude. "We did it, my love," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "We saved our people, and we created a future worthy of their legacy." Caleb nodded, his heart full of a profound sense of fulfillment. He had come to this world a stranger, a reluctant savior, but he had found a home, a family, and a purpose that had changed him forever. He had helped them to rebuild their civilization, to reclaim their past, and to reach for the stars. He was no longer a lost pilot drifting through the cosmos, he was a part of something greater than himself, a part of a story that would be told for generations to come. "We did it together," he said, his gaze fixed on the endless expanse of the galaxy. And as he looked out at the stars, Caleb knew that the journey was far from over, and he was content with the life he had chosen, the life he had created with the beautiful giant women who had given him hope and a future among the stars. He was home, not on Earth, but among the stars with his family, the tribe he had helped to rebuild, and he knew that they would face any challenges together, for now and for all time.